Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I was accused of medical malpractice while pushing a bin of biohazardous waste. Life is full of surprises. That summer between my first and second year at university was supposed to be simple. My friend had hooked me up with a job at the pathology lab where she worked. The pay was better than anything else I could find, and the work wasn't complicated. If something needed zero expertise, it landed on my to-do list. Unpacking deliveries, moving bins, organizing the storeroom. I still had to wear a lab coat, a hospital policy since I handled questionable materials, and had to walk through the actual labs. The coat was slightly too big and made me feel like I was playing dress-up. But rules are rules. One of my daily tasks was changing the burn bin each morning. This wasn't your ordinary trash can. It was a massive bright yellow commercial bin on wheels with a lock, filled with used microscope slides, cultures, and other medical waste. My job was to wheel this monster down the main corridor of the hospital, out a side door to a pickup point, and then drag an empty one back. Simple enough. The main corridor was the spine of the hospital, with doors on either side leading to different wards and departments. Usually I'd make the journey without incident, nodding to the actual medical professionals as I passed. That morning I was halfway down the corridor thinking about my paycheck when I heard someone calling for a doctor. I kept walking because they couldn't be talking to me. I was a 19-year-old pushing medical waste. Then I felt a sharp tug on my jacket from behind. The woman shouted for a doctor again, louder this time. I stopped, surprised by the volume and the jacket grabbing. Turning around, I found myself face to face with a middle-aged woman with crossed arms. She told me she was sorry for stopping me, calling me doctor, and said she had questions about her mother's condition. She thought I was busy but hoped I could help anyway. I looked at her confused about how she could mistake me for a physician while I was pushing a container of medical waste. I told her that I wasn't a doctor. She said I was wearing a lab coat, like that proved my medical credentials. I told her I worked in the pathology lab, which needed the coat, but said again I wasn't a doctor. She looked me up and down, her eyes on my blue lanyard with the pathology lab key card. Instead of seeing her mistake, she got angry. She said I was obviously a doctor because of my coat and lanyard. She said I was ignoring patients because I was busy and blamed people like me for the current state of the National Health Service. Being blamed for Britain's entire healthcare system was new to me. I tried talking to her one more time. I told her some obvious facts. I was too young to be a doctor at 19, my lanyard said pathology lab, and I was pushing a medical waste bin. I said she should ask for help at the ward where she would find actual medical staff who could answer her questions. Without waiting for her to answer, I took off as fast as possible while pushing a large container of biohazardous material. I reached the drop-off point, exchanged my full bin for an empty one, and started making my way back to the lab. That's when I heard her shouting that she had found him. Looking over, I saw the same woman talking to a nurse at the ward entrance. She was gesturing wildly and pointing at me. The nurse looked baffled. The woman told the nurse she had found someone willing to do their job, unlike others. The nurse said with confusion that she thought the woman had talked to a doctor. The nurse said I wasn't a doctor, as I was pushing a bin and looked about 12 years old. Thanks for that, nurse. I'll just head over to the burn unit since I've been incinerated. I didn't stay to hear the rest of that conversation. I just kept moving with my bin, wanting to escape the madness happening behind me. When I got back to the lab, I told my manager about the incident in case any complaints came through. My manager asked if someone had really thought I was a doctor while I was pushing the burn bin. I said yes, that's exactly what happened, adding that the woman had grabbed my coat and wouldn't believe me. My manager asked if I had told her I wasn't a doctor. I said I had tried multiple times, pointing to my lanyard, mentioning my age, and even showing the bin of medical waste I was pushing. My manager laughed so hard she had to sit down. She joked that I should be promoted to Dr. Bin Pusher. The nickname stuck for the rest of the summer. The next day I was dreading my burn bin duty, worried I might see the woman again. As I pushed the bin down the corridor, I kept my eyes forward, moving faster than usual. When I passed the ward where yesterday's problem happened, I noticed the same nurse at the station. She caught my eye and waved me over. The nurse called me Bin Boy and asked if I had a minute to talk. I stopped and asked if everything was okay. The nurse said sorry about the previous day's incident. She told me that the woman had been causing problems all week, thinking that staff were hiding information about her mother. I said it was just a misunderstanding, trying to be nice. The nurse disagreed, telling me that after I left, the woman had wanted to see the hospital administrator to complain about a young doctor who refused to help her. She said they had to explain many times that I wasn't a doctor before the woman finally believed them. I said I couldn't believe it. The nurse said it was true and added that the woman then tried to accuse me of pretending to be medical staff by wearing the coat. I told her that wearing the coat was required for lab staff. The nurse said they understood that and told me not to worry, as the administrator had fixed the situation. She said the woman had been moved to another ward. As I continued my route, I wondered if she was now bothering some poor radiologist or physical therapist, thinking they were secretly her mother's doctor in disguise. The rest of my summer passed without more accusations of medical negligence or impersonation. I did get a new name tag for my lab coat that said pathology assistant, not a doctor, in bold letters. My manager thought it was funny. When I went back to university that fall and people asked about my summer job, I had a much better story to tell than I pushed bins around the hospital. I have been the world's least qualified, most reluctant doctor for about 3 minutes. Not a bad addition to my resume. Working at a bank during a pandemic led to one of the craziest encounters of my career. Back in 2020, I was a banker in New York when COVID-19 turned everything upside down. Our bank made major operational changes. Most branches closed temporarily, and the remaining ones operated in split shifts. My team worked Thursday through Saturday, while Team A covered Monday through Wednesday. We also shortened our hours, closing at 3 p.m. instead of 5 p.m., and the usual suit and tie dress code was suspended. My job changed dramatically too. Instead of my normal responsibilities, I mainly helped clients with basic services like ordering debit cards and setting up online banking. We switched to an appointment-only system to prevent crowding in the branch. I was also tasked with traffic control, managing the line of customers waiting outside since we could only allow a few people inside at once. One Thursday afternoon around 2:30 p.m., I stepped outside briefly to take a few pulls from my vape. While I was outside, a middle-aged woman walked right past a line of waiting customers and entered the branch. I followed her inside and told her that there was a line outside for people waiting for transactions. She ignored what I said, walked away from me, and sat herself down in my office. I should mention that it wasn't my office. I was working at this branch temporarily, but I had been using this workspace for almost a month on my Thursday-Saturday shifts. I followed her into the office and asked how I could help her. She told me to leave. I tried explaining that I worked there and it was my office, but she wouldn't let me finish. She walked up to the teller and said I was harassing her because she had skipped the line. The teller supported me, telling the woman that I did work there and that was my office. The teller explained that the banker she usually saw only worked Monday through Wednesday now. I tried again by asking what she needed help with. Normally, I would have explained our appointment-only policy, but tensions were already high and were trained to de-escalate when possible. If it was something quick, I figured I could help her and avoid making things worse. She sat back down in my office and said she needed a new debit card. I asked to see her identification since we couldn't make any account changes without verifying identity. She said she had left her ID at home and that I didn't need it because she was a regular customer. I told her that I couldn't help without proper identification. That's when she lost her temper. She said I didn't know what I was talking about, and she didn't want to deal with me. I learned later that the banker who usually helped her had a long-term relationship with her as a client, which meant he could sometimes assist without ID. But I had never met her before, and bank policy was clear. No ID, no service. She started yelling about who she was, how much money she had in the bank, that she could have me fired. and demanded I do what she told me. By this point, I was getting frustrated but maintained my professionalism. I told her I was sorry but my hands were tied and I couldn't help without identification. She walked out of my office, but instead of leaving, she sat down in the waiting area, hoping to see another banker. I tried explaining that the other banker was with a client and that we were appointment only, but she refused to let me speak. I pulled my co-worker out of his meeting briefly, and he told her the same thing. She needed ID and couldn't wait there without an appointment. Finally, she stood up and walked out. This was happening after 2:30 p.m., and we closed at 3 p.m. By the time she left, it was about 2:50 p.m. After she walked out, my colleagues told me that she was always difficult like this. We closed the branch at 3 p.m. as scheduled, rolling down the security gate. Most of my co-workers completed their end-of-day procedures and left. By 3:30 p.m., only the teller and I remained, finishing up our work. We heard loud banging on the security gate. She was back. She told me to open the gate, saying she had gotten her ID and needed a new debit card. I told her that we were closed, the security system was on, and I couldn't turn the computers back on or open the gate. She called me an idiot and said that we closed at 5 p.m. and it was only 3:30. I told her that our hours had changed a month ago, with all branches having new hours now, and pointed out the signs posted on the door and walls showing the new closing time of 3 p.m. I suggested she return on Monday when her regular banker would be there to help her. What happened next was shocking. She started cursing at me, saying she was going to kill me and burn the whole place down. Then she grabbed one of the small metal garbage cans from the lobby area and began repeatedly throwing it against the security gate. You should never do something like this in a bank. Even the smallest banks have serious security measures. The repeated impacts on the gate triggered our alarm system, putting the bank into lockdown and automatically calling the police. The police arrived quickly, and our security team called to advise us on procedure. A security representative told the officers that we had footage of this woman damaging bank property, attempting to break in, threatening arson, and threatening an employee's life. They arrested her right there. Seeing her in tears as they put her in the police car made me feel a little bad. But some lines you just don't cross. I don't know what happened to her afterward or what charges she faced. New York was dismissing certain cases during COVID to avoid putting people at risk of infection in jail. But what she did involved a federally regulated institution, which might have made it more serious. We had to stay in the branch until our bank's security team arrived. I had to speak with HR over the phone, write an incident report, and deal with follow-up meetings the next day. I wasn't in any trouble since the security footage confirmed everything I reported. All this because this woman thought she was above the rules. Bank policy, common courtesy, and even the law didn't apply to her. In her mind, getting a new debit card was worth getting arrested for. I landed what seemed like the perfect job at a promising startup after finishing my master's in data science. The mission hit home, creating data-driven environmental impact assessments for businesses. The pay wasn't amazing, but I believed in what they were doing. My enthusiasm lasted about 3 months. The first red flag appeared during a quarterly review meeting. My manager, Karen, was presenting my analysis on client retention rates. I pointed out that slide 7 had an error because the correlation coefficient should be negative. Karen dismissed my concern, saying the executives wouldn't understand those technical details anyway. When I tried to explain that, it changed the conclusion about why customers were leaving. She just told me to let her handle the executive communication, claiming that was her job. I should have walked away then. Karen had been promoted from customer service to data analysis manager despite having zero background in analytics. She couldn't even use VLOOKUP in Excel, let alone understand regression analysis. But the company's mission kept me there, and I thought I could make it work. For a whole year, I became the invisible backbone of our 5-person team. I created the dashboards, built the models, cleaned the data, and automated reports, only for Karen to present everything as her team's work. Whenever executives asked technical questions, she'd nervously ask me in private later. Karen would often complain that my reports were too complicated and ask me to dumb them down, requesting just 3 bullet points for each conclusion. When I explained we'd be losing important details that could help decision-making, She insisted the executives didn't have time and just wanted colorful, simple presentations. The breaking point came about a month ago. A co-worker from marketing complained that I had manipulated numbers to make her department look bad. The accusation was absurd. The data showed their campaign did poorly, but I hadn't touched the raw numbers. Still, Karen called me into a meeting with HR. Karen claimed that team members had concerns about my work ethic and attitude. When I asked who complained, saying I've been getting positive feedback all year, the HR person avoided my question and instead said they needed to discuss my negative impact on team morale. I requested examples, and Karen accused me of undermining her authority by questioning her decisions in meetings. I was floored. I pulled out my performance reviews, all positive, and emails showing Karen regularly praising my work. Yet somehow I was now being placed on a performance improvement plan. The HR person told me that I was being put on a performance improvement plan right away and listed the areas where I needed to improve. The list was ridiculous. Not being a team player, undermining management, and producing complex analyses. Nothing about the quality of my actual work. I pointed out that these claims went against all my performance feedback and mentioned I had proof. Karen responded that my defensive attitude was the problem and accused me of being negative about feedback. When I argued that these were false accusations, the HR person threatened to fire me if I refused to sign the performance improvement plan. I signed. But that same afternoon, I overheard Karen in the conference room next to my desk interviewing an internal candidate. She was telling them that the data analyst role should be available within 30 days, and they just needed to complete some paperwork. I wasn't being improved, I was being replaced. That night, I updated my resume and started applying for jobs. Within 2 weeks, I had 3 interviews and an offer from a company with twice the salary and an actual data scientist as my manager. Once I signed the new contract, I stopped caring. I worked from home, did the minimum, and documented everything. Karen kept asking me to prepare her presentations for executive meetings. Karen messaged me saying she needed the Q1 analysis by tomorrow for the board meeting. I replied that I'd uploaded the raw data to the shared drive and noted where all the files were, adding that as the data analysis manager, she should be able to create the presentation herself. She responded that that's not how we work, and I knew she needed the completed slides. I reminded her that according to my performance improvement plan, I was producing complex analyses. So I was trying to improve by giving her the chance to simplify the data herself. She complained to HR right away. An emergency meeting was called. The HR person accused me of bad behavior. I defended myself by saying I provided all the data and asked if there was something wrong with my analysis. Karen stammered that she couldn't tell if it was wrong because it wasn't in presentation format. The director of operations asked what she meant by not being able to tell, questioning if she wasn't the manager of data analysis. Karen fumbled, saying she needed time to review it. When the director asked her to explain what metrics she was looking for in the data, Karen used technical terms wrong, clearly having no idea what she was talking about. The director looked concerned. The director of operations suggested they needed to review the entire department's processes. 2 days later, I resigned. The exit interview was thorough, done by someone from corporate I'd never met before. My situation had triggered a full department audit. I provided all my documentation of the past year, including the differences between my performance reviews and the sudden performance improvement plan. The investigator thanked me and mentioned they were reviewing management practices in my department. I learned later from a former colleague that Karen's entire team was being evaluated by consultants, with executives sitting in on their meetings. Her credibility was destroyed when they found she couldn't explain basic concepts that she'd been presenting as her work for years. I'm now 4 weeks into my new job with a manager who has a PhD in statistics. Yesterday, he spent 1 hour discussing my analysis and offering helpful suggestions. No dumbing down required. That toxic year was hell, but watching Karen's house of cards collapse, worth it. I work as an emergency medical technician for about 4 years now. It's not an easy job, but someone's got to do it, and I love helping people. What I don't love are the long shifts that leave me drained, both physically and mentally. Yesterday was one of those days. Our ambulance team had been running non-stop across the county. Nothing too bad, but the constant minor emergencies, transports, and paperwork had left me wiped out by the end of my 12-hour shift. When I finally clocked out at 10:50 p.m., all I wanted was to get home, eat something that wasn't from a vending machine, and crash. I changed out of my uniform into my comfort clothes, just some old gray sweats, a faded t-shirt, and my favorite hoodie. Nothing fancy, but after being in that stiff uniform all day, it felt like heaven. My apartment had no food, so I decided to stop by the local grocery store on my way home. They closed at 11 p.m. and it was already 10:50, but I just needed something quick I could heat up. I pulled into the parking lot with just a few minutes to spare. The cashier at the entrance looked annoyed as I walked in. I said sorry and told them I'd be quick, just grabbing one thing. The cashier said they were closing in 10 minutes. I went straight to the frozen section, looking for something easy to make. I found a frozen lasagna that looked good and grabbed it from the freezer. As I turned to head to checkout, I heard someone behind me. Ahem! Not a throat-clearing sound, but someone saying it out loud like they were reading it. I turned around to see a middle-aged woman with a customer is always right face. She told me to go to the back and get her a pack of frozen pretzels. I looked down at my outfit and back at her. I said I didn't work there and pointed to an employee who had just gone behind an end cap. Her face twisted into a scowl. She said I did work there and told me to stop being lazy and get her pretzels. I was too tired for this. I said again that I didn't work there and walked toward the self-checkout area. Behind me, she was talking loudly about lazy employees and managers. Whatever. Not my problem. I scanned my item, paid, and got my receipt. As I was grabbing my bag to leave, I heard noise and saw the same woman walking toward me with a store manager. She was pointing at me and calling me a lazy witch. I didn't want to fight after the day I'd had. I held up my receipt and bag to the self-checkout person and walked out. Behind me, I heard the manager trying to get the woman's attention, calling out to her. She'd left her shopping cart in the store to come after me. I just wanted to get to my car and go home. The woman had other plans. By the time I reached my car, she stood right in front of it. She was yelling about something, but I was too tired to listen. Something about disrespect and my job and reporting me. I sat in my car, too tired to even be angry. Through the store windows, I saw the manager stick his head out the door. He called to the woman. She turned and made a hushing hand motion at him. The manager called to her again. She yelled back that she was dealing with his employee since he was too weak to do it himself. The manager tried to speak, but she screamed at him to shut up. The manager shrugged and went back inside, locked the door, turned the sign to closed, and pulled down the shades. The woman, still in front of my car, noticed I wasn't listening to her. She asked what I was looking at that was so important. I pointed to the store and said they had just closed and locked the doors. She made some weird noise and ran back to the store entrance. She started hitting the doors and yelling, giving me the chance to back out and drive away. As I left the parking lot, I saw her in my mirror, still hitting the doors of the closed store. The lasagna was okay, but watching that woman get locked out of the store while trying to bother someone who didn't work there was the best part of my day. I slept well that night knowing an entitled person didn't get what they wanted. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.